we decided to do it as open source, right? We really want to give back to the community, whatever we can. This is healthcare, and so the privacy is involved, security is involved, compliances are involved.
What was this whole transition like? What is NoSQL all about? And like, can you tell me a bit more about that? I think a lot of our viewers are probably like in the healthcare space. They most likely use a SQL database.
Because right now, today, everybody's talking about AI. How do we get AI into healthcare? You cannot simply take up a document and put it into ChatGPT and tell it to analyze itself.
So, what do you think, Prasad? What is next for the Couchbase FHIR Server, and what do you expect people to do next? Hi everyone, I have Prasad here with me today, and this is the Digital Health Hackers podcast. Prasad is from Couchbase, and again, Medlogs and Couchbase, we've been working for a while, so disclaimers, we've been doing this together. But I think what they're doing is genuinely interesting. And Prasad, before we get into like Couchbase and FHIR and other things, just tell me a bit about yourself and like what really got you into Couchbase and this whole database world.
Okay. First, thanks a lot, Sidharth, for inviting me in your podcast. I really appreciate it. A bit about myself. So I don't want to go too long a ways back, but I was working in IBM before I joined Couchbase, and I've been working with databases for quite a long time, starting with Informix, and then DB2, both in Informix and in IBM. So I do come from a database background. So after IBM, I was looking for something exciting to do. And at that time, I hadn't really heard about things like NoSQL, which was completely new to me. But some of my colleagues were working in Couchbase at the time. And the way they described it, I felt this was a pretty interesting and kind of a unique thing, which I hadn't even realized before. And it kind of piqued my interest. And it encouraged me to join that team. And remember, at that time, Couchbase was pre-IPO. It was a small team, very exciting place to work in, a lot of opportunities, a lot of learning to do, and a completely new technology for me. So it was very exciting to join at that time, a very dynamic company where I could grow along with the company and learn a lot of new stuff, and which is what I really wanted to do.
So let's get into the NoSQL bit, right? Like I think a lot of our viewers are probably like in the healthcare space, they most likely use a SQL database. Okay, they most likely use an RDBMS database. So I think when you were, before you joined Couchbase, you were more or less working with RDBMSs all the time, right? What was this whole transition like? What is NoSQL all about? And like, can you tell me a bit more about that?
So first, let us talk about RDBMS, right? Now, RDBMS, what is it that you have? You start with a fixed schema. And the first thing I learned in RDBMS is first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, how to do normalized forms, right? So even before you write a single line of code or an application, first you have to decide how do you lay out the table? What will be the schema? What will be the table? What will be the columns? What will be the primary index? And you spend a lot of time and effort on this. And remember, because altering it later on is a very, very, very difficult task. And the second thing is you also have to decide upfront a lot of things about your own application. That is, how much do you want it to grow? And at that time, what kind of load it's going to have, how many documents, what is the sizing, and that's very, very critical because RDBMS usually do not scale horizontally, they always scale vertically, and to do that. So you're stuck with two things. Your first, number one, you are stuck with a fixed schema, you are stuck with vertical scaling, and to change it later on is an almost impossible task. And you have to do a lot of refactoring for this. So it does not to throw shade on RDBMS. It's an excellent product, right? And people are using it all the time. And for certain applications, it is wonderful, where everything is designed upfront, and you're very, very happy with it.
And again, for the uninformed audience, right, like RDBMS is Relational Database Management System, and this is probably what Postgres, MySQL, the popular databases, when people get started, you lay out your tables upfront, and many people who are learning for the first time, like programming, that's usually where they hit a wall. They're like, okay, now I need to set all of this upfront. Okay, and yes, Prasad, back to you. NoSQL.
Correct. But the one advantage in RDBMS is, irrespective of the vendor, right, that language is the same. It is SQL. So once you learn SQL, and once you learn the normalization is the same thing. So it actually, your skills are transferable across. I mean, there are certain nuances for every database, like DB2 or Oracle or Informix or other databases also. But generally, the overall the language and everything is still the same. So you have a little bit of familiarity with this. But with this new applications, where number one, you want to develop applications which are very modern, which require a flexible schema, and you want to start development as soon as possible, right? You start with the application first, and then storage. Okay, as long as it's flexible. What happens with the NoSQL databases, it allows you to start with the application first, because the schema, it always keeps evolving and you can keep changing it and doing it all the time. And you're not stuck with this and do this first. So that was the first big experience for me in, to retool my thinking, in to come to terms with normalization. Completely understood. Denormalization, oh my God, you're repeating the data all over the place. How inefficient is this? So, but I had to get used to this. And Couchbase at that time, of course, we did start with what we call the data service, right? It was like Memcached, completely data service. It is almost like a cache in front of other things. But when I joined Couchbase, we had just started developing something which we call Nickel, and that was exactly SQL applied to a NoSQL database. So, which means now NoSQL is no longer a very strange place to be, and a lot of new things. You know SQL. Hey, you come to Couchbase and you're absolutely familiar with it. Exactly the same thing. You don't have tables, of course. You have collections, and you don't have schemas. It is schemaless, right? But and you don't have columns and rows. You have documents. But otherwise, from the application point of view, once you get adjusted to this, then it becomes a little so flexible. And you really don't think upfront of, okay, what is my partitioning logic across? How do I get the partition key, etc. And scalability, you can start small, build your application, and scalability comes after the fact, and you can keep on evolving. So multiple applications can share the same thing, and each one may have a different schema, but can share the same collection. So, and Couchbase was doing this. These were the exciting things Couchbase was doing, like Nickel, and of course, after that, and GSI indexes, exactly the same SQL. And now we're calling it SQL++. And of course, we came up with a lot of other services like full text search, etc., and analytics later on. And in my time in Couchbase, I started with Couchbase on-prem, and I was one of the first product managers in Capella, which we launched, which was DBAS, which was software as a service for the exact same Couchbase. And I learned a lot more over there, trying when getting into the cloud. So we do have still on-prem and DBAS with a lot more services. And
Yeah.
so this, in a nutshell, was my
And
journey in Couchbase.
again, to recap, right? Like, so I think SQL, at the time, most people were like, okay, I know exactly upfront what I'm going to design. I know exactly upfront what my tables are going to look like. And I know exactly upfront what my load and scale is going to look like. I'm not developing for something that I don't know. And I'm also thinking like this happened around the same time that internet scale companies started to become like a big thing, right? It's like Facebook serving the whole world. There's like Google doing all of this.
Yeah.
And NoSQL sort of almost was positioned there, which is okay, you don't have to know the scale. You can horizontally scale in ultimate, like unlimited number of nodes. And again, like faster iteration cycles. And I'm actually seeing this today with the developers of today who are like learning to code. They get started with something like React, and the database is like an afterthought after they have this JSON that they want to store, that their React app is like somehow generating. Where do I store this? Okay, I put it in like a database that's able to handle that. So it makes sense. So now tell me how and where you started looking at the healthcare industry, and like how did you come across FHIR, and why is Couchbase interested in FHIR?
Correct. So, and before that, I'll briefly touch on something which you mentioned, right? JSON. And a lot of modern applications, especially web-based, right? They all are like a REST, and that language, at least the interchange standard, which they always use, is JSON. And this is a document DB, which is JSON native, and which makes perfect sense. So that allows me to segue into FHIR. Like I said, so in Couchbase, what they encourage us is for people to explore what are the different areas in which Couchbase could be well suited for. And I was challenged to come up with something in healthcare to find out the suitability of Couchbase in the healthcare space. I watched a ton of videos. At the time, of course, I had no idea about FHIR. Did a lot of research, watched a ton of videos, and including, of course, a lot of yours, which proved to be very, very useful for me. Then I thought to myself, okay, so I understand that FHIR is an interoperability standard, not a storage standard, but it is JSON, right? So which leads me, then it actually lends itself to a document DB kind of storage. To my surprise, I found that a lot of, I mean, most of the people, at least in my limited knowledge at the time, were using Postgres, and I was always puzzled, why use RDBMS for something which is native JSON? And that kind of puzzled me. Of course, in Postgres, you can store JSON B, right? It's not as though you cannot store JSON documents. But leaving that aside, so number one, but then I studied FHIR, and I said, okay, FHIR comes with what? 146 resource types, right? And of course, we have to support all of them. But the more interesting part is the search, which is so important in FHIR. And apart from this 146 resource types, each one comes with a ton of search parameters. So indexing will become a challenge. How do you index a JSON document to satisfy so many different search parameters? And number one, the index has to be very efficient. It should not be bloated and occupy a lot of space. Number two, it should be highly performant. And number three, it should be very scalable, right? But we already had a product for that, a full text search, which we call FTS. And don't let the name fool you. Full text search doesn't index text alone, it does even numbers and date time, which is perfect for FHIR. And we can index it and target it for deeply nested JSON documents. So you're not indexing at the top level and saying index complete document, which is a complete waste of space, but rather go into the nested structure. Like, for example, codable concept is there, right? And so you have to index something right inside that. And full text search was very, very suitable for that. And the third thing in FHIR is transactions. You have to be, compliant with transactions, and of course, Couchbase is ACID compliant. And we have already touched on the NoSQL part of it and how it is horizontally scalable, etc. But apart from that, these were the base things which I felt that okay, Couchbase is very suitable. Number one. Number two, I don't see many NoSQL solutions for FHIR out there. Don't know why. Maybe they don't have a product as good as Couchbase. And hey, that's me. And number three is apart from this, once you come, and this is healthcare, right? And apart from this, it's my own personal thing. I'm involved in this healthcare over here. So I thought, okay, I could contribute also to healthcare. And this actually leads me to why I or we decided to do it as open source, right? We really want to give back to that community, whatever we can. And so apart from that, healthcare for file server needs a lot more, right? This is healthcare, and so the privacy is involved, security is involved, compliances are involved. So if you go to Couchbase Capella, and I've already mentioned Capella before, which is our DBAS offering, it comes with all of them. We have compliances. We are SOC 2, PCI, GDPR, and HIPAA compliant. So you get all the compliances. You get the scalability. With Capella, you get that 4 nines uptime. You get 24/7 support. You get other things like backup and restore across clusters, including point-in-time restore. And you get what we call XDCR, cross data replication, which means that you can have this for high availability. If even you can have the two clusters across regions, both active, right? Try to do that in RDBMS, active. Okay, so active. And so even if an entire region like US East goes down, US West is still there or any other thing. And we support all the clouds, of course. We are cloud agnostic. It's you can AWS or Azure and Google Cloud.
Yeah.
So Couchbase, increasingly it becomes more and more suitable. And I just want to wind up with, if you have any questions, ask me. But yeah, I really thought, okay, this is solid enough to say, yeah, Couchbase is a really, really good fit for this. But there are a couple more things which really push me over the edge and saying, yeah, I have to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think technologically it is definitely like, okay, this is
Yeah,
the obvious, like, okay, like it's possible there is already such a good search functionality for JSON and
exactly.
it just needs to be done. But I also think it's important to look at it from the perspective of like where we've gotten as a society, or like just as the regulation around healthcare, right? So HIPAA, GDPR,
Yeah,
for example, I think this is the basic foundation of why FHIR even is a thing today, which is they say that any hospital or any institution, any insurance, again, GDPR also has this, so it's not just the US, it's internationally valid law that
yeah,
states that you need to give access to a patient's own data and patient's own records in a portable, computable format. Okay. Now the whole problem is that nobody defined what that portable format should look like. So everybody decided to like do their own thing. It's only very, very recently, and again, it's picking up so much steam right now. The ONC, or like they renamed it to ASTP right now, they came out with regulations saying that every EHR vendor needs to support API access to patient information via FHIR APIs. Then the CMS came out and said that anybody who is involved in Medicare, again, like anyone who's elderly, and it's a federal program, so any insurance that is dealing with Medicare data needs to be able to give their patients access to their own data through FHIR. Right, I think the two major, really big things that's like knocking on the door right now is regulation is pushing hard on this. And again, like we've always had this ruling in HIPAA, in GDPR. It's such a very basic fundamental right, but it's only now that people are putting a name to that portability spec, like, and they are calling that like FHIR. So I think the timing probably couldn't have been better on like, okay, what do we do, how do we do this, and like what the technological challenges are. Now if we look at SQL databases, right, like if we look at SQL databases, there is always always a compromise. It's always like, okay, you can technically make as many indexes as you want, but that's going to affect write performance. And what we are seeing is, for example, like even Happy FHIR, for if you take it, the searches that you are able to do, they'll usually cache it to a minute. They'll be like, okay, you can search it, but then we are not going to run the same search on the database. We are going to like give you the same results that you got like 1 minute ago. Now, I think Couchbase, what do you think? Like in terms of technology, where else do you think Couchbase shines where the other existing technology is not there yet?
Okay, so like I said, our FTS performance is excellent. The other thing is I do know that even on Postgres and other databases, if you have JSON, right, you can do this GIN index, and you can actually index also, down specifically to a field level or something, just like FTS. But in some, you're talking about Happy and JPA and things that way. What I find in some of those applications is what they do, they actually extract out some of those index terms and actually put them in different columns, right? With Couchbase, that's not there. So, which pretty much means that we are a single source of truth. So there is no extraction and flattening out of JSON anywhere. So we are indexing directly onto this column. Number two, and even if you say if you want a more detailed text indexes, the other RDBMS they'll tell you, hey, why don't you use Elastic, right? Which means you're pretty much duplicating data across to another server, and you're managing a pretty big stack, right? Now you have something in front, and you said other people, like if you want a fast response, just to go over this indexing or whatever you were saying, that it may become slower for the last 1 minute, then you put in a cache like Redis in front. But hey, Couchbase is a cache database memory first itself, right? We don't need to put another cache right in front. Couchbase is memory first, right off the bat. So it is a single platform, okay, without adding other pieces just to make it more functional or more performant. And this comes built in with this. And furthermore, I just said there are a couple of other things which I thought will make this Couchbase exciting. Because right now, today, everybody's talking about AI. And even when I look at these videos, and even in your videos, and you have also discussed, how do we get AI into healthcare? And that's a very challenging thing to do because number one, because of all the HIPAA compliances, you cannot simply take up a document and put it into ChatGPT and tell it to analyze itself. So you have to maintain the privacy. You have to de-identify a lot of things, and you have to do population kinds of analysis. And we have announced a couple of new things in Couchbase, actually three new things, which makes it perfect for this. Number one, we have enterprise analytics server, right? Which is like a columnar database, no ETL. So whatever you have in this database, you can take it over to columnar, and you can get this nice dashboards. It's a full functional columnar database. And the second thing is we also have announced our, especially with version 8, our billion scale vector indexing, which means that now you can put vectors into for vectorize that document again in Couchbase without taking it to another service like Snowflake or whatever else it is, right? And this is billion scale. It really, and internally we have seen the performance, and it's really, really good. It's kind of outstanding, even if I say so myself. And the third thing is we also announced AI services, which is comes along just a couple of months back. We announced it. So, and this AI services allows you to stand up your own private LLM behind a firewall. Like I said, even if it is Capella, and this is available even for on-prem. So now, and with multiple models, I think we have 16 at the time of this podcast, and more to come. So we have a lot more models, a LLM which is private, which means that you can do RAG applications without ever having to leave the Couchbase platform. You don't have to attach other things to it just to make it functional. Now imagine what the possibilities are for AI when it's completely private, and you can do RAG on a billion documents at scale with performance, right? That is what is exciting. So all these things in a combination, I think, tip this application in Couchbase favor. And like you rightly said, right place at the right time, I guess.
Perfect. I mean, let's take it for a spin. Let's see what we have, and let's I think let's
Okay.
start the demo.
So for this demo, okay, this is a live demo, right? So fingers crossed. But I've done this quite a few times. I just want to highlight, I just want to not go in depth into the code or whatever, but I just want to show you the functionality of what this actually does. Like I said, this is completely open source and it's completely transparent. I hope you can see this.
Yep.
So the first thing is for Couchbase, not, again, you need a server for it. I've already got a server over here, right? I've already set up a server. Now this FHIR server needs one database to be available, and this has to be called FHIR. Now, this is a self-managed single node server which I'm running on an EC2 instance. Okay. I've already set up my server over here with all the 4 services. So first, let me add a bucket. Okay, and each one is going to take, so all I'll do is simply name it FHIR, and this has to be named FHIR. It is a single tenant. Originally, we started with multi-tenant, and that got, technically, it became a little bit challenging, and it didn't allow the flexibility which we needed, and that's why we changed it over to this. So since I have only one single node, I will not enable replicas, and I'll just add my bucket over here. So this FHIR bucket is ready. So now we are ready to install our FHIR server and actually connect it to this EC2 instance. And for this, by the way, you can always go to the documentation over here. This is called fire.couchbase.com. It has the full documentation, so and with a little bit of video, etc. So let me go to the documentation. I have another EC2 instance which I've just logged in, and I showed you the terminal in which I've already pre-installed Docker. So that is the one thing which you'll need to install, Docker. But once you have installed Docker, let me go and install the FHIR server. So what it requires is, it says first create a config.yaml file and install the FHIR server. So let me just copy this command, and let me come to this terminal and simply say cat config.yaml. Okay. It's a very, very simple file. All it requires is for you to say what your base URL is, which is where the EC2 instance, where the FHIR server is running, and what is the connection string to your, Couchbase server itself. Like I said, this can be standalone, and so my connection string is only EC2 instance, or it could have been Capella. Then I would have put that as my connection string. Once this is done, and I've already copied that command over here, I'll have to execute it. And so what it actually does is now pulling down all these Docker images, and it will automatically create them and start this Docker images. And remember, because this config.yaml mentioned the connection string, it automatically will connect to this, but it's still an empty database. But let's go. And here it says you can look at the logs. Okay, just let's see what the logs look like. Docker compose logs -f. Okay, so this is up and ready. And as you can see, okay, this is just, I just wanted to show you what the logs look like. And the base URL is this, and it says the bucket not initialized. So now let me bring up my screen over here. Well, so this is where you first, end up with. So initially it needs a login, and this login, this admin login, and this actually is mentioned in the config.yaml itself, saying that this is the initial login, and it is taken from the config.yaml file. Okay, so I logged in as this, and once I log in, it first says, okay, it found out the bucket. It says, okay, it's not initialized yet. Shall I initialize it? Okay, let's initialize it. Okay, this is going to take a few seconds. And when it's doing it, let me explain what it is doing. And as the steps mentioned, it creates all the scopes. Then it creates all that FTS indexes. Then it creates some GSI indexes also. But those GSI indexes, we usually we don't use it for FHIR, but we actually use it more for housekeeping, like user management or token management, etc. And I'll come to that momentarily when I'm actually discussing this. So now it's actually ready, up and ready. Another good thing is, uh, I told you that the admin user and the password are from the config file, which is a flat file. So it's always a good thing once you log in to go to your account over here and change the password, right? For security, once you change the password, this will automatically be maintained in Couchbase server itself. So the next time you log in, you're not going to log in using that config file, but rather what is in the Couchbase server, right? And by the way, Sidharth, please, interrupt me anytime and ask any questions which you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think the can you tell me the system resources and all of this? This is again, you're pulling it from the container itself, correct?
Correct. So you see two halves over here, right? The one is the Couchbase server details itself, which I'm pulling in from the Couchbase server side, which is a completely different EC2 instance. And this EC2 is a FHIR server. And I'm pulling in all kinds of metrics and details from the FHIR server itself, which is running on another EC2, which you saw me logging in and actually initializing it. All right. Okay. So here you can see the host name, and I show some details over here. But the more important thing to note is this FHIR configuration. In my config YAML file, I already mentioned, okay, this release 4, we are fixed for now. Valid. So there are two concepts over here. One is validation and what's the profile. So, and as you know, I think you described it in your previous video also. For validation, in the back end, we use Happy library for validating all these resources. So there is basic validation. Validation can be strict or it can be lenient, and you can configure it, or it can be no validation itself. If you want to say, hey, I do want to have this document, I don't want this document, irrespective of how it looks, to be ever rejected by, if you really want to do that, you can turn off validation. As far as the profile is concerned, again, you have a couple of choices. Number one, the basic profile or US Core. Incidentally, we support US Core for now, but we do have plans to support other profiles as well. And in this particular instance, I've created this bucket as US Core. And once created as US Core, it'll always be US Core, right? So now that we have it, let us see the buckets. And okay, now a little bit into the weeds, right? It's not too deep. So what we have done is we have 146 different resource types, right? So we had architectural decision to make whether you can do it in two ways. Number one, have all the resource type in a single collection and a single index. Okay, that works. Or have every single resource type as it's in its own collection, right? And each collection has its own full text search index. That is another way to go. The third way is like the kind of Goldilocks way, if you want to put it that way. So what we decided is that we'll take the top, let's say, 10 highly used resource types, put them in their own collections with their own FTS index for high performance, and put the rest, 136 or even more if FHIR server adds to it, and put them all in one general collection. And that's what you see over here. Now that we have it, the FHIR server is ready to use. Now I can go to Postman with one additional step, but to make it more interesting, we have some built-in samples. Okay, so I have three kinds of samples. One is I did it from a Cynthia sample data set, and the US core. For this US core, you can go to the US core website for this implementation guide, and they give you a sample set for you to try. And if you want to click, and you can import the sample, and we have made this very easy. Or for ONC testing, there are certain types which a lot of people they call it that Lucian whatever that document. So if you're familiar with that, you can load that too. So let me quickly load the US core sample data set, and I'll explain to you what's happening. So this is going to load about 4 patients. It's done it already. Hey, just for fun, let me load the other sample data set also. And this is about 7 samples. So once the sample data sets are loaded, the indexes are already built. So let me come back to this collections. I loaded 4 plus 7. Now we have 11 patients. Okay. So this is on all these resource which are over here. And that metrics, these are all Couchbase metrics. These are super useful when you're actually running it under load and you want to see the performance. And you want to see the performance end to end. And I'll show you what I mean end to end. So, whenever you do a search, for example, right, whether it is with the include, whether it is chain, or whether it is straight patient by ID, and how do we get this document and display it to you? We do it in 2 steps. Number one, we use the full text search index in order to get the document key. And then we use the data service of Couchbase server in order to fetch the document itself. And this is highly optimized because both of them are really highly performant pieces of the puzzle over here. So now let us take a look at this indexes, right? I have 11 documents, and here you can see, take for example, patient. Look at the index, how big the index is. Why? Patient itself has a lot of search parameters, and we have to support all the FHIR search parameters. And here you can see a tree view of all the indexes which you have built, and you can see the metrics over here. And here, of course, it doesn't show anything, but under load, now you get the end-to-end picture. Under load, you can see how each index is performing. What is the query rate? What is the average latency, document count, the indexing queue, and then you come back to collections. Then you get a system point of view. What is the CPU for the Couchbase server? What is the cache performance, operations per second, and how many requests per second your search is doing? Coming back to the dashboard, now you can see from the FHIR server point of view, what are the system resources, operation concurrency, latency, GC heap, and if you're familiar, this is not exactly the Java flight recorder. If you're very familiar with Java flight recorder, and if you have done analysis on Java JVM performance, but it's kind of let us say, a diluted, a small piece of this. And it's very interesting to monitor this young, old for the GC heap, the pause time, the meta space, for direct and mapped. So end to end, right from the FTS index performance to the Couchbase server performance to the FHIR performance. So you get complete transparency into exactly how your coach and where the bottlenecks are.
Again, just for the viewers quickly, you can also export all of this to a Prometheus endpoint. It's not like it's only available within the dashboard. All of this, again, you can scrape using a general like metrics tool and get this in your Grafana dashboard, for example, if you'd like.
Excellent point. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sidharth. Yes, so we do want to export all the metrics so that you get a real good insight and into, of course, hopefully this will be a zero admin FHIR server. As I showed you in the config.yaml, right? In the config.yaml, it didn't contain many sections. Actually, you can tune a lot of parameters, including the number of Tomcat threads, or from the SDK side, the number of connections, etc. But believe me, right off the bat, out of the box, this has been configured even for small applications and even for load tests. You really don't have to do much tuning at all. And in fact, we tell you don't try to tune anything unless you're sure of what you're doing, because and we have tried this under load, and default tuning is very good. Okay. So now let's come to the FHIR resources, and this is just a very simple viewer. And you can see, for example, the JSON file over here. And you can see all resources. You say, if you want to do a care team, for example, and the example for the care team is over here. You can see the FHIR version of this if you're interested to see this. And versions, we also store all the versions in a separate collection all by itself, and this blame actually only if you have if you're updating it, and if you have multiple versions, you can see, and this displays the output in the git diff format, right? That green and red, which you are very, very familiar with. So, and of course, you can search for it by patient ID. And by the way, this is not the only viewer. If you're familiar with Vanya, for example, feel free to use this. Yeah, and it works pretty well with Couchbase FHIR Server also. Okay, so let me come to FHIR groups later on, but let me quickly go to users. And when we actually load that sample, so you can create two kinds of users over here. I won't go too much in depth in this topic, but I just want to briefly explain what this is. So there are two kinds of users. Number one is a developer. A developer is the one who registers, a smart client applications, which we will come to momentarily, or the administrator who has full access to this UI, right? But you will see that it is for only developer and administrator, but I do have a couple of actually FHIR users, right? And this is for demo only, and we expect that you keep all the patients and the user management into an external thing like a Keycloak, which which we are going to have support for, or incognito, or any other authentication server which you have. But for demo purposes, we have added a practitioner and a patient, and I'll show you where we use it. So now the FHIR server is up and running. Let us see how we can actually use it. The first thing which you need is, but if you want to use a FHIR server, you need a token in order to, a bearer token in order to authenticate yourself and get a JWT token. So this is a must. And so you can generate a token over here. And let me call it, the application name is, you can call it anything, I'll simply call it text. And the more important thing is look at the scopes. This token will automatically have your scopes like system, which means pretty much open, right? So let us generate a token. And what we have to do is we have to copy this. And let me show you how, and we can use it. So where I want to use a token, you can use it in a curl command. And the more popular thing is you want to use it in Postman. Okay, so even when this is there, I'll bring up Postman over here, and I've got Postman up and running over here. But let me set up my environment over here. So I've got a host name, and for a token, the host is pointing to my EC2 instance /FHIR, right? This is where the FHIR server is running. Okay, not my Couchbase server. And for this token, we just created one. So let us copy this over here. And now that we have copied that over here, so let us go to our first command, get patient name. Make sure that we are pointing to the AWS, which we just had this token and things for. So over here we have the query parameters. So for authorization, as you can see, I've got this token over here, and so we are good to go. So for the host, I've already mentioned that host has my EC2 instance, and I'm going to do a small search on a name, and we can send it over here, and it says 200 OK, and we get the resource type as bundle. And here you can see, I don't want to, let me make this, is this very clear? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so as you can see, you remember I said the base URL, and I'll come back to this. So now we have this, and why this three? Because the patient name Baxter, it's a family of three people. That's why you got the search set, and we got this entire bundle over here. Okay, this is a very quick, and now and the same token you can use in curl, you can use in Vanya, you can use in any other tool which you want. So, and let us come back to our FHIR server. So we are done with this. and it won't be shown again. And of course, from the admin point of view, you can always revoke a token or you can permanently delete a token. Okay, so we have covered almost quite a lot of this, but let's come to a smart. One way of using this FHIR server is through an application with a bearer token, etc. And the other way is to client register and register client for smart applications. But for this, I really don't have any other smart client, but I prefer to use Inferno, right? And which is a really good testing tool to test for. It's actually testing for compliance, but it's a very good tool for testing for smart applications, and it's a good smart client. Which brings me to the next. But right now, if you look at even for Postman, my endpoint over there, I've used it as HTTP. Although we had a bearer token, I'm still not using TLS and there's no SSL, right? From my client to the FHIR server, right? But when I want to use Inferno, Inferno really requires a TLS connection to it. Otherwise, it'll create lots of problems. But how do we do that? And to do that, it's actually pretty easy. And so let me come out of this. So what I've done is I went ahead and registered, a domain name for myself, cbfire.com, and you can go to GoDaddy or Amazon or any other place, etc. Then I've used the free service of Cloudflare in order to host it so that my TLS endpoint from the client is Cloudflare, and I wanted it to be SSL right from the FHIR server to Cloudflare also. So for that, I used Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt is a free service which allows you to generate a token once you have a domain name. Once I purchase that domain name, then I used Let's Encrypt. So what we can do is, and now things become very simple. So I'll go into this where I got this FHIR service running, and I have to just change my config.yaml file. And so what I've done is, so now from the base URL, I'm going to just modify this. Like I said, I'd already got my domain as cbfire.com, and that's what I'm going to use. So this I'm not going to use anymore. HTTP. So it comes with this. The rest of it is still the same, right? The Couchbase server is still connected at the backend. It is only the FHIR server, the base URL, which I'm going to change. The rest of the things are all the same. There is no difference at all. And but for TLS enabled instead of false, let me make it true. And for my certificate, which I said I got from Let's Encrypt, I've put it in etc HA proxy. This is on my local system. I just have to mention where this file is. Don't worry, this certificate file will be automatically copied into the Docker instance. But now that I've just enabled TLS and I've just changed my base URL, I'll save this. And over here, we are given a scripts folder over here. All I have to do is go to scripts. And then we have a shell program called apply config. What it'll do is it'll take a configuration file, the modified configuration file, build its own compose files. It will automatically restart this entire thing once again. And again, we can go and see the logs. Now it is starting. It just started a second back. So it's restarting, but this time it is restarting with a different base URL. Okay, so now you can see that the base URL is cbfire.com. So if I go over here, then my Couchbase FHIR CE, this is no longer valid. So it'll say not secure. It's a connection error because this is no longer valid. So let me take another thing. I've already got cbfire.com. This time, again, it comes with the login. And let me log in as my usual admin.
Now I can see HTTPS there, so it's working.
Exactly. You can see HTTPS over here. Again, boom, we are here. Everything else is the same. So let me close this. So now we have this HTTPS. So we still have all the things. We still have the same tokens, etc. So what we'll do is we'll go back to Postman to see how this works. But this time we'll do this. We went to this AWS. We had this token. We are going to make use of the same token in a different, environment over here. I got another one called cbfire.com. Here, my host is HTTPS. Let me change this with our new token. Done. Same get patient name, but this time instead of AWS, I'll use cbfire.com. Send the request, see what comes back. Same bundle, same tree, but this time the self that link is https cbfire.com. It is as simple as that. Getting it from SSL to non-SSL to SSL, just a couple of steps. Of course, you do have to register your domain name, etc. I'm not bypassing that. But once you have that, it is very, very, very simple and everything runs. Okay, so now we have this. Now let's do the more interesting thing, right? I already got Inferno over here. So right now, so we are now going to run this as a smart application. So this is the ONC G10 standardized testing kit. So let us do this and we'll start testing. We are supporting US Core 6.1.0 and we are supporting the Smart App Launch 2.0 and bulk data. And this is something to do with groups. So let me create a test session over here. And for this test session, so it says, I'm going to test the standalone patient app. I won't go deeply into what is a standalone patient app or a provider app, etc. And as I'm doing it, you'll see. And then I can say, prior to running the scenario, register the info as a confidential client with this following information, which is the redirect URI, it says. So let me copy this, whatever it says over here.
Again, for the audience, the way that the Inferno testing kit works is that it is a Smart on Fire application, and you register it with your own EHR, and then it runs a couple of tests, make sure like everything works. So in this case, again, like we are registering a new client. I think Prasad is showing how we are doing that, and then we need to provide it the client ID back. So I think we'll do that now.
Okay, now let us register a new client, and we are going to call it Inferno. And over here, we need the redirect URI. So I'm going to first copy this, redirect URI. But like it said, it is a provider app. It can have even be a patient app. There's a little bit of a difference. It has to be a confidential client, and you can have different allowed scopes. So let us have all read, and I can mention what all read is. So we have to copy this and make sure that the scopes are exact on both places. And even here, and the FHIR endpoint is the same. And this, see, this has to be the exact same thing for both. So I put this. So it's identical. I need a couple more things. So for that, I'll go back to this. And once I have this, I'll add this and register the client. Now I've registered the client, right? So the two things which I needed was the client ID. So let me copy this, then go back to this and paste the client ID. Then I need the client secret. Of course, it's always a good thing to keep this in another, in a notepad or something also. Leave the rest, right? So now we have registered the client. So now we have a client registered successfully. We have got the client ID, we have got the client secret, and we are done with this. We can close this. But again, if you forget what is it that you registered for, you can always click this and it will show you what the client ID is and what the scopes are, patient, open ID. See, this is exactly what we copied in the standardized test also. But once we have this, let us submit. Okay, now it is going to run the test. So what FHIR does is probably Sidharth, you should could explain this much better than I can. So I'm just following this. So if you want, you can stop me, and if you want to explain what exactly is happening, please go ahead,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I can just
sure.
go through.
I mean, I think if you've already worked with Smart on Fire and Smart on Fire apps, this is a modification of OAuth. But again, in this case, the Couchbase Fire server is handling all of this for you. So I think when Prasad hits on authorize, it takes you back to the authentication page, and you will see. Let's go with that, and you see a
Okay,
login
so this
where
is the
again,
authentication. Yeah,
yeah, I think you can
correct.
go ahead, Prasad.
So okay, thanks, Siddharth. So, like Siddharth said, authentication and authorization, right? So here we are doing authentication, okay, and we'll see what the authorization part of it comes. So, do you remember when I showed you that there were users created in Couchbase, right? And that was for authentication. Really, you can add key cloak and incognito and have the authentication as something else. The other thing is, I showed you there were two users created. One was a practitioner and the other one was a patient. Now, for a provider app, you have to be sure that it is a practitioner. In our case, example.org, Ronald Bone is a practitioner, and the practitioner has to log in, right? So now let us authenticate. Right now, because this is on Couchbase server itself, we are going to authenticate this. Once it's authenticated, now remember we said this was a patient launch, which means that the practitioner has a list of patients for them to choose any one patient in order to progress with this test. Of course, you can search for the patient, etc. But we already have a patient. Let me choose example, which is Amy Shaw. Once I am continuing with the selected patient, then we have to authorize it. So you remember we had all this patient. If you can do it as very granular. You can have like observation alone, you can have condition or a mix of this, and even in observation, you can go down and drill down into what they call very granular kind of authorization forms. And you can pretty much you can do a lot of things with it and go as granular as you want. But for us, for this particular application, we kept it as RU, which is read and update. And here you have to approve the test selected. Once you approve, now this OAuth flow, see, it went to authentication, we authenticated, then we came to the patient picker, then the picker we it allowed you to pick a patient, and then it came to authorization, you authorized it, it went back. So this back and forth, it goes all over the place. But finally, if things are working properly, you'll see that although it shows only four, this actually does quite a lot of things. You can drill down and find out a lot more. And obviously, this is passed. I won't go through all the various other tests over here. Only to show that, yeah, we have passed this thing. So let us go back to our FHIR server. So I pretty much, we have covered quite a lot of ground over here. And just to finish, let me wind up with FHIR groups. A group is actually another FHIR resource, right? It is nothing more than that. But to build a group is actually, you can do it through Post also, just like with the REST API using Postman, but that is very cumbersome. And we have given you a very easy way to build groups. So I'll just show you how to create a group over here. And you can put this group name. Let me put as a test or something like that way. So you can have this groups can be on patient, practitioner. You can have these are the standard FHIR specifications, right? You should be able to create groups on all of these things. And here I've chosen patient. And here this search filter is the exact same FHIR search filter which you use in Postman or in any other application, which means I've given in examples over here. Like, for example, you can say has condition, right? I don't know what the SNOMED city is, but you can create a group of just diabetic patients alone, right? by putting a hash condition. And even if you have a million patients, it'll create a group. And here I'm going to create, without any filter at all. So I can do a small preview. It says, okay, I found 11. Remember, we have only 11. And if you had more, it'll probably match everything and it'll give you, and you can say, okay, I want to create a group over here. And let me do it again. Okay, we have created a group. So it's not refreshing. I'll just refresh it by coming back and forth. So it's created a group over here. So it'll be interesting to find out. See, you have group ID and you have a resource type. Just for fun, let's find out what exactly did it actually create. So go back to FHIR Resources and say group. And then you see, this is the one which we really created. You remember we added a lot of patients, and this is the standard, JSON file format. See, it has members. So, and each one this is a reference. So, and it puts us a reference for every single member that we have added. And for the Couchbase FHIR server, we have a restriction of about 10,000 members per group. So, and I wish I could show you a lot of things, especially running under a load test and looking at all these metrics, and that'll be really cool. But I think we have covered quite a bit of ground over here and all the important topics, Siddharth. Unless you want to see anything specific.
No, I think it's super interesting, right? I really think that the FHIR server itself, the industry itself, they don't have that many options out there. Like you have the open source one, you have the one by Google, you have the one by AWS. But then apart from that, people or organizations who are even looking to, as a provider, looking to go through the whole G10 certification by themselves, it's a big ordeal, right? Like it's a big task. And just like looking at the number of tests for each scenario, it's huge. And for payers as well, just even like getting those few resources exposed, it's not that easy. So it just having another option, and again, like all of this is open source, anybody can take it and use it however they want, and all of this is completely free and open source. They can start using it from like day zero. So that to me itself is like, okay, we are adding another option that people can seriously consider. And Couchbase being the company that it is, that that it's going to work at scale, it's not going to stop when you have like 1 million patients, right? So I think it's really good for the whole industry as a whole, and like everybody is in need of a solution that sort of like does all of these things. And you showed the Inferno and like just the test for one particular scenario, but then God, there's a lot of different options and scenarios, and like the authentication options, groups, bulk. So it's quite a lot. Yep.
Exactly.
So, what do you think, Prasad? What is next for the Couchbase FHIR server, and what do you expect people to do next?
We have to finish with the call to action, right? That is always the. But anyway, so what I expect, number one, and you have mentioned this before, you should adopt it just because it is open source, but that itself is a powerful thing, and a lot of people have open source also. But you see that when you actually play with it, you see how suitable Couchbase is for us and how easy it is, right? And a whole bunch of things, and it is and all the indexes and everything are built in for you, so it's not very complicated, and you can just imagine, right? So even if you want to extend it for yourself, like you said, open source, right? I want to add, okay, this is not even FHIR, but I want to add my own completely resource type, and I want to index on it. Hey, have fun with it. You can absolutely do it with very, very, very little effort, right? And there's not much. You simply have to have the resource type. Probably it contains something very crazy, and you have complete control. You have a Couchbase server. Add one more field to your FTS index, and boom, it just works out of the box. So we want people to look at this, take a look at this, and please do join our go to this documentation site. And at the bottom, I have this Discord channel. Please do join the Discord channel, or you can contact us, me, Couchbase, or MedBlocks, and and this is open source. What does it mean? It means that this is a community-driven project. So if you have, we are absolutely open for ideas. Is it not, Siddharth? So if you have ideas, suggestions, saying, hey, why don't you add this? Hey, I need this. Or even criticism. I don't think this screen really works. How come we can change it? Or, hey, I'm going to fork it and I'm going to do something I can also contribute. Absolutely welcome. We really do this, number one. So we want to encourage, and especially if you have customers or prospects in mind who are thinking and of a good alternative and who want complete control over their data, to be on-prem, they own the full data and they want to do all kinds of things on it, and go with Couchbase. And we'll work with you if you have such customers or prospects, and we surely will want to work with you. And the second thing is from the this side itself, and we have been working on this, Siddharth, and like you said, 6 months. This is pretty impressive, right? We've come so far in 6 months. We have covered so much that smart and all kinds of things. And but we do have working on other things as well. Number one, support more profiles, like you said, and number two, that certification which you're constantly talking about. And you already said that this is going to be enforced by the US, right? More and more. So that is a requirement. And number three, and this is the fun part. Apart from these two, this is the fun part. AI. How do you do AI? Right? If you have any ideas on how to incorporate AI, vector search, and etc., that'll be really cool. But we really want it to be a community-driven project, and where people can contribute and say, hey, I also built the server.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm leaving a link to all of that in the description. Again, like you'll see the Discord channel, you'll see the Git repo. Like do check it out, see if you can run it. And again, if you run across any issues or if you have any suggestions, you can definitely like contact us or like even create an issue. We're like more than happy to just take it to the next level. And again, I think Couchbase is one of those few companies who's like really taking the whole data platform play like seriously, fully, like across the board, not just as a transactional system. It's like a transactional system, yes, but there is also like the vector side of things. Yes, there is also the OLAP side of things. Like, okay, and if the healthcare and FHIR specifically usually lends itself really well to these things. Like you have a SQL on FHIR spec coming out. Like, okay, like how do you run these things at scale? So I think and more new use cases might open up. So it's there, it's out there, and again, it's been great working with you and like actually seeing this much happen in 6 months. And people who are interested in having a FHIR solution, this is again one more option that you have right now. So do take it for a spin and let us know what you think. Anything that you want to talk about, we are here. So yeah, anything else, Prasad?
Finally, Siddharth, it's been a real pleasure working with you and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.